Okay, so this is going to be kind of a quick tutorial slash talk through about how I write music for picture and my kind of process. If you're working on Project 4 and you do decide to write music, maybe this will help. So basically, let's take a look at what I'm going to be working with. This is the entire session, by the way. I'm just going to mute things so you can kind of see what the original video was. So here's the original video. So you can see the music is really fun, it's orchestral, and it's very Kirby coded. If you ever play Kirby games, they all kind of have the same genre or feel to them. I don't know if they're all written by the same composer, but they have that same sort of, there's the Kirby sound. It's very whimsical. And so for your trailer, what you definitely want to do is go through and look at the OST, or original soundtrack, of either the movie or the game, sort of get a vibe for what they want out of it, right? And then that's going to be kind of what you're going for. So for this, what I did was, to start off, I actually sat with a metronome on my phone, and without putting on any of the music or any of the sound, I just watched the trailer, and on my phone I would tap the tempo out until I got something I liked, right? So for me, I found that the tempo of 171 is kind of what I liked. I originally started at 170, but I had to bump it up to 171 to better fit the tempo to the cuts and changes that were happening on screen. You'll likely have to do that. The other way you could do it, if you wanted to be really specific, is put a marker for every cut and then kind of like use Pro Tools to identify the beat between, two things, and sort of say like, oh, I want to fit 4 bars between these 2 big cuts, and then it'll give you a tempo. I never do that. It is something you can do if you want. I always just like my tap tempo method. After that, I quickly just started making a sketch. And by that, I'm just using the Logic stock Rhodes sound. And I started putting down and writing down the the melody I had in my head, right? So right, so you basically, for me, I make this whole sketch of just like, what is the melody, what is the bass doing. Occasionally I'll throw in chords if I'm feeling what they should be in that exact moment. So like for an example here, I knew I wanted this to hit like a big C chord. And for those of you who are into music, I did write this in, I want to say, I think it's C major, but I can't remember. And then now there's a couple things like I want to note, right? So we have this nice melody and it's working well, right? But we've heard it enough. So now we can start changing it, because there is a big moment here in the trailer where Kirby does this giant sword slash thing, right? And it's a full animation separate from the gameplay. So we want to make note of that, right? I made a huge sound design, sword slash, all the motions, boom, 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 it makes all the noise. And so I wanted to make a transition so that I would hit the note and it would end right as he points the sword at at the player. So this is all transitioning stuff I wrote in between those 2 points, right? So I knew I wanted to end this melody here, and I wanted to have the big chord kind of hit here. So I had to write some things to fill in the blank, right? And which is great. It sounds awesome. It's basically just a walk down through the chords in the key until we get to a nice, I can't remember if I landed on the 4th or the 5th, but whatever. Just a different chord, right? And then once we come out of that, we jump straight back into this idea number 1 that we made up, or leitmotif number 1, or theme number 1, whatever you want to call it, right? So we're straight back in. So you'll notice we're back to another scene where there's an animated section. There's a lot of sound design that I did for this portion, but also it tonally shifts, right? We go from this bright, happy, colorful game to sort of like blacks and purples. So I wanted to reflect that by going to a minor scale, right? So if we listen, and then once we get to the big splash animation logo where it's Kirby and it's the name of the game and all that stuff, I wanted to bring back the leitmotif that we established at the beginning and during the other gameplay footage pieces and sort of end it together with that. So once I had my sort of dark section done, I needed to build a way back up to that leitmotif that we started. So there's a key change in here. You'll hear it. I believe we go from, let's see what the chords are. We go from, what is this? A G. Yeah, so we go like. Yeah, so we go from a C to A sharp, up to D, and then an E, and to F. And so, maybe this piece is an F, I can't remember. But it basically lands back on what's home and what feels comfortable, right? Yeah, it must be an F because C is the 5. Okay. So, yeah. And then we have that transition down to the big held note, and we end on the 1. Right? And so I moved this bass pattern up to, oh, hi, James. You guys get to see my cat. So I moved this bass pattern up to the melody area for this one last little bit while the low end and the bass and everything are holding these big 1 chord notes, right? And then we end. Just an octave down. Okay, buddy. Love you. Goodbye. And yeah, so that's the sketch. So sort of once you have your sketch, you can start splitting it up into different pieces. So I split it up. There's like the middle melody, right, where I built. That's what's doing that ostinato pattern throughout everything. I also split a section up that has all the chords. So once I had the melody and the bass part kind of written out, I probably made the bass part second. I usually do the bass part second right after the melody. So you can kind of hear the bass, right? And we wrote, it basically just sits around whatever the tonic is of each chord, and the bass part's usually pretty boring. And then we switch over to the chords, which based on our bass note and our melody and everything, you can kind of derive some chords. Right. And the chords matter a lot more through these change sections because these kind of all just sit here in F during the main part, but then we change chords. And if you are kind of curious as to how I voice these chords, I basically write them all out as block chords, and then I go through and add inversions by dragging notes up and down to create the kind of melodic arc that I want. So like you can see the high notes keep getting higher, and it makes the chord progression feel like it's lifting. So let's listen to that again. And I wanted that low C in there because that's like a very strong sound, right? And over here you can kind of see these are mostly block chords with some inversions during the section. So that's fun. I wrote that there because that wound up being part of the strings. Right? So let's go ahead. Once you have all these things sort of written out, I immediately start arranging. So let's go ahead and mute them so they're out of the way. Same thing with the original. And I started breaking it up from there. So this is organized. Nothing is labeled because I'm very disorganized in my sessions, and this is also not a big deal. But yeah. So I started right away by like, okay, well, we've got the bass part already written, so let's just throw a bass sound, right? Oh, here, let's go unmute this so you can hear this. And it's a 5-string bass because I wanted that low see in there. Anywho, so that's playing the bass part. And then I actually took the chords and kind of built the strings into that. I built that into the strings. Yeah, that's fun. Listen to that. So I'll talk about this for a little bit, but the strings, basically I'm using two libraries. One of them is Symphobia, which is a Kontakt library, and the other one is actually the Logic strings. The Logic strings are super tight and have like no reverb, and so they have great attack on them. Right? And so what's really fun about those is when you blend them together with this very realistic library, it's awesome. You basically get to blend the two volumes as if they're dry and a wet. And yeah, the other thing about MIDI composition is once you've written everything out, I go through and just select all. A lot of DAWs have this. For Logic, you just open up MIDI transform and go to humanize, and just it'll randomize the notes within a certain value in terms of their velocity and also their how in time they are. And by actually screwing it up, you make it sound more realistic. So those are the strings, and then I have some more strings to play like high melody parts. Right, and so same with over here. So there's those. And then what are you guys? I think these might actually be, these are the horns here. Okay, so these are the horn section. They sound kind of goofy, especially on their own, but it's a combination of Session Horns Pro from Kontakt as well as the Logic horns. I think we have here some like chords being played by the horns too. Yeah. Same blend. And if you look over at these, I believe that, do I have any modulation right? No, I don't. So for the strings too, to get kind of that flow, I wind up putting in modulation variation, as you can see. That just, I know, makes it sound more realistic. It's what controls the intensity and velocity is when you play with the mod wheel. At least in the Symphobia libraries. There's always something like that for all of them. I've also got a harp here. The harp doesn't do much except play kind of the high notes in the intro. And then it just arpeggiates through the chords. And then I have it playing a big run earlier, right? And if you're curious as to how I made this kind of run, I literally just put my finger on the keyboard and ran it up the scale. Like, not even up the scale, I just ran it up the keys, right? And then I went through and changed any notes that were not in the key, but I think they all are. So yeah. And then other than that, we've got here some like, I think this, is this the celeste part? Oh no, this is the big, what are those called? Orchestral chimes, yeah. So those just hit the kind of tonic of chords at times to drive them home. And then lastly is the main melody, which in a lot of Kirby games is the woodwinds, so I moved that to a woodwind, right? This is a blend of like 3 different libraries. And it sounds both realistic and unrealistic, which is what you want for this kind of thing. There's like a celeste part playing some runs, right? Yeah, so overall, the whole orchestrated piece sounds something like this. So yeah, the entire thing I have up on Canvas for you to check out if you want. It's the finished version of the trailer with all the music and all the sound effects. So yeah, that's about it. I have some other videos talking about the sound design for this project specifically and just generally sound design advice. So yeah, hopefully this helps. I know this is a very whimsical and fun one, but if you're doing a more hard-hitting, kind of edgier one, I think there's a lot in here that you can learn from that you can take with you. So yeah, that's about it, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.